Canada has a massive interest rate announcement. Cops are up in the air watching us on the highway, which I've always seen those signs, right? Air traffic, or this area is operated by air control or whatever the hell on the highway in Ontario. And now we have a video to actually show what that means. So it's not just a sign, it's real life. I always knew that, he says sarcastically. You also have a lot of protests that are breaking out across Canada and a big update for foreign workers here in Canada. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage everyone to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel, and we are very, very close to 400,000 subscribers, and I would really appreciate your guys' help in getting there. And without further ado, let's get into it. Not before I tell you how you can offset the cost of home heating this winter. The carbon tax has made things extremely expensive, and I know a lot of people waited long into the winter months to turn on their furnaces and to increase the heat in their home. So one of the best ways you can do this is by clicking the link down in the description or the pinned comment below. Get yourself a Freedom hoodie. Might as well just bundle yourself up at home, and then you can wait a little bit longer to keep until you turn that heat on. Link for that is down in the description or the pinned comment below. Let's get into the polls. You have Justin Trudeau, who miraculously somehow went up a few points from 70 to 75 in the past week, and Pierre Poilievre went down, which is just mind-blowing to me. I still not comprehend what the hell happened for this to take such a, I don't want to say drastic shift, but for this change to have happened. And then you have 99% likely across the board for the Conservatives of winning the most seats and for a majority government. So even though there has been a slight change in the polls, it hasn't really been significant enough for any big changes. So that is good. And they are booting up Parliament very, very soon. So we're going to have to wait and see how the next 12 months really unfold and what that looks like for the polls and support for Justin Trudeau. Now, our first piece of news is right here. The tax bill for the average Canadian family has increased not 27%, not 270%, 2,705% since 1961. Canadians are just so extremely taxed. It is unfreaking believable. And then, speaking of unbelievable, you also have asylum claims in Canada by Indian citizens. So over the years, you've had a pretty low amount. Let me just make it so everyone can see, dating back from 2015, you had very few, like just dozens, maybe hundreds. And then in 2019 and 2020, it just broke, the 1,000 or just under the 1,000 threshold. And then it took a bit of a dip, and now it's skyrocketed. And in 2024, you have almost 3,500 people from India alone have been claiming asylum in Canada. And that is just insane. And these are monthly claims. So you have, tens of thousands potentially by the year's end that are claiming asylum in Canada, which is very, very controversial. And this is a loophole that we're going to be talking about shortly in this video. In other news, Justin Trudeau doesn't look good. I made a video about this not too long ago where he's undergoing some sort of medical, I don't want to say transition, but it seems like an emergency because he's lost a tremendous amount of weight, and it's been super quick how he's lost it. Like, that's very, very unhealthy. Now, we have seen from the Liberal Party a different weight loss transformation. Marco Mendicino, he was bigger, right, in the body and in the face around the Freedom Convoy. You saw a lot of him doing press conferences in the House of Commons, and he became, the scapegoat pretty much for the Emergencies Act invocation and all of that controversy. He disappeared. He disappeared from the front. He wasn't in press conferences. He just hid in the shadows. He was still in Parliament. But since he's resurfaced in the past 4, 5, 6 months, he's lost a lot of weight, right? Which is crazy. But that took a year or so to do, or maybe even a little bit more. Whereas Justin Trudeau, this has happened in months, and it just doesn't look healthy. A lot of people are concerned for him, but I'd love to know what you guys think. Do you think this is normal weight loss, or do you think this is abnormal? Let me know what you guys have to say about that. Speaking of abnormal, you have Israeli and Palestinian protesters are getting into scuffles in the middle of the streets while there is traffic. Let's take a look at this.
Get back to the car! Get back to the car!
And people are just fighting. They're being pulled from cars. People are being pulled out of cars. They're running into ongoing traffic. And it just seems like tensions in Canada are escalating to a point where we need something to happen. We need the government to maybe, I don't know if I really want to advocate for the government stepping in on this, but we need some more peace talks, and we need Canada to be united about Canadian problems, not about other problems that are around the world that don't have a direct impact on what's happening here in Canada. And to my opinion is that we need everyone's attention on this upcoming election, because it's a massive pivotal point for the future of Canada. If Justin Trudeau wins, if the Liberals stay in power and they continue a form of a coalition with the NDP and the Bloc Québécois, we could be at a point where it's irreversible, the damage. And there's a lot of arguments. A lot of people already agree that it is irreversible and that it's just Canada is going down the shitter anyways. But I'm very optimistic, and I think that with a new government, with a new direction, with a bit more competence in the management department, we could turn things around. But let me know what you guys think down below. Next up, we have Tim Hortons, again, under the radar here. Tim Hortons has had quite a bit of backlash from people picking their feet behind the counters as employees, to now fruit flies in their donuts, to just the amount of foreign workers they've been hiring and neglecting Canadians' first dibs at the jobs. It's not looking good for Canadian Tire, for Tim Hortons, and that's pretty disgusting. That is absolutely disgusting. And there once was a time where Tim Hortons donuts were freshly made. Like, you would see them freshly made. You could smell it. And I'm not going to say that they're not freshly made now, but I don't really know. I don't know. I just feel like things sit behind a counter for a lot longer than they should. And, yesterday's batch, a few days ago, that batch might just linger a little bit longer than normal because they haven't sold it and they maybe don't want to throw it out, and they're trying to cut costs instead of just throwing it away. Just sell old stuff. And it just feels like the quality of service of the food industry has rapidly declined, which is not how any of us were ever raised, how life, this is not normal. This was not how life was 10 years ago. 9 years ago, that's when it started to decline, but I don't know. What else happened 9 years ago, folks? What else happened 9 years ago? Now, I don't know if I'm looking too much into this, but the Liberals have always done a phenomenal job of taking credit for things that either wasn't their idea, or just taking credit for things that they have no business taking credit for. And when things are, implemented in this country that are actually helping people, that go against what the Liberals wanted, usually they have something to say. But in this instance, this is very, very bizarre. Everyone has noticed that there is a massive issue with foreign workers taking up Canadian jobs. And so what's the solution? Pierre Poilievre has said that businesses should only hire, we should put a place in, or a policy in, where businesses have to wait, let's just, for the sake of this conversation, use the arbitrary number of 3 months where they list a job publicly, where everybody can see your local Tim Hortons, your local Canadian Tire, working a retail position, whatever it is, or an engineer position. And if those 3 months go by and no Canadians want that job, then that place of business has the opportunity to come in and hire foreign workers to fill that. Now, that's a good thing. I think a lot of people would actually agree with that, and that's hit home for a lot of Canadians. Now, the problem with that is that, from my understanding, Pierre hasn't said how long we should wait. So I use 3 months because that's what I think is a good amount of time. But maybe they're going to go with something significantly less, like 30 days, or maybe something significantly more, like 6 months. But there's going to have to be that fine balance between how long is enough and I mean, if they're waiting 3 months to fill those jobs, that could be a lot of lost income for those businesses. And so are now we just setting businesses up to fail if Canadians don't want those jobs? We're going to have to wait and see how that unravels, but we're not there quite yet. Where we are is that this has already been implemented, sort of, only in one specific part of the country, only for a very short amount of time. And there's a lot of exceptions, which I mean, is a step in the right direction. And you would think that our government officials would be going, look, we're testing things out. We hear Canadians, we see what's going on, and we're trying to do our very best to plug the holes in these little loopholes that our system has and make Canada a better country, right? Make Canada great again. I'm sure you'll never, ever, ever hear a liberal or progressive person say that, but nonetheless, something along those lines. But that's not what happened. You didn't have that type of celebration or even commentary. This is Randy Boissonneau. Which Randy are we talking about? One of the two Randys out there. And he just shared this piece of information. And as you can see, there is no caption at all, which to me sends a signal that he doesn't like this. Randy doesn't approve of this, and he's just sharing out a piece of information because that's his job. He's not saying Canada's moving in the proper direction. Look, we hear you guys. We're taking a step in the right direction. To me, it says that he's against this. Now, that's just me potentially looking into this, but as I explain what's going on, I would absolutely love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. And this is, in fact, such a big story that it's on the front page of CBC. But it wasn't the Liberals' idea, so maybe that's why he doesn't want to say it. This was Quebec's idea. So here is what's going on. I have approved a proposal by the government of Quebec for a 6-month freeze on the approval of new applications for the low-wage stream of temporary foreign worker program in Montreal, with the exception of construction, agriculture, food processing, education, and social services sectors. So there you have it. There are a lot of exceptions. At least they didn't use the blanket term that they did during COVID of frontline workers or people that are deemed essential, because that was just so confusing. You had ma and pa shops and gyms, right, for people to work out and better their health that were not deemed essential. And then you had Walmart, which was deemed essential, but not all of Walmart, right? Like they blocked off. Remember, they blocked off and taped off some parts of Walmart. Like it was just super bizarre. So at least they didn't use that ridiculous terminology. But again, it just begs a question, Randy, if you, and I don't know if this is him approving it, because it literally says, I have approved a proposal by the government of Quebec. He's the only MP that I'm aware of that has shared this. So if you've approved this, it means that either you were strong-armed and didn't want to do it, but there's a lot of social pressure for you to do it, or you are taking pride in this but don't want to comment on it, and if so, why? So I don't know if it's me just being super like paranoid and be like, why didn't you say that? Because at the same time, no matter what Randy would have said, everybody would have looked at it under the microscope and said, well, why are you bragging about this? Pierre's been talking about this. Why only in Montreal? And even though Randy literally didn't say anything about it when he shared this, people rush to the comments, including myself. I said blink twice if you're the other Randy, which, by the way, if you're not following me on X, I highly recommend you go do so. But this individual here did say, so if I have this right, it's kind of like a pilot program to see if it should be rolled out across the country. If so, that would be huge, and you should speak to that properly, which is where I'm personally left with this massive amount of confusion. That's huge. In fact, that's exactly what Pierre Poilievre has kind of been talking about with a bit of a different spin on it, but that's great. That's going to help solve a lot of this foreign worker program monopoly where a lot of these jobs are being scooped up by foreign workers, and Canada might be a little bit balanced out. Now, a lot of people want to see that, including myself, happen immediately on a national scale, not in one tiny little part, specifically in Quebec, talking about Montreal. But we're gonna take it, and we're not gonna over glorify them, the Liberal and the Quebecers of doing this. Like it's yes, it's good, but you should be doing it at a much higher scale. And maybe if you don't want to do it across the entire country, at least do it in each province to see what the reaction is. But a lot of people want it to be more, but nonetheless, it's a step in the right direction. And I'm just very confused as to why he's not taking like credit for it, why he's not going, hey, look what I'm doing, Canadians. We hear you loud and clear. It's just very, very bizarre. And this is massive. So again, I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about this. And speaking of additional massive news, Ontario is closing down all of their safe injection sites that are near schools. Now, this seems to be a given. This seems to be common sense. And I don't want to, this is the thing about the Liberals, is they've made Canada so fucked up that when they do things like this, myself included, my initial reaction is, hey, look, the Liberals are finally doing something good. But they created the goddamn problem. So what the hell? Why am I congratulating them for solving a problem that they've created, which again is, not to go backwards in the news, but what we just talked about with Randy, the foreign workers program, like they created that issue and now they're slowly trying to solve it. Super, super weird. But 6Buzz shared this: Ontario government to close Toronto supervised consumption sites near schools and ban a few sites in the areas. And you have one of the top comments here saying, near schools, whose bright idea was that in the first place? Ban all safe consumption sites. They shouldn't exist anymore. It's just super bizarre that we're being gaslit into thinking that the Liberals are helping solve the country when they're the ones that made this happen in the first place. So keep that in mind when it comes time to vote. Keep that in mind when you're sharing the news and discussing things with people, because they caused the problem and now they expect some sort of mass congratulations for trying to solve it and taking the right steps to solve it. That is manipulative at the highest level. But CP24, City News rather, is talking about it here. So let's just take a quick look at this video.
Good morning. Welcome to City News 24/7. I'm Faiza Amin. We're expecting to hear from some of the province's top ministers on the future of supervised drug consumption sites, and what is announced later today could bring changes here in the GTA. Our Karen Seolin joins us now with the latest. Karen, you reached out to the province. What are you learning about this announcement?
Well, Faiza, the Premier's office has now confirmed to me that Health Minister Sylvia Jones will be announcing more details on new restrictions around safe consumption sites in the province when she speaks to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario in Ottawa this afternoon. Now, the new rules will include banning consumption sites within 200 meters near schools and childcare centres, as well as what the province is calling addiction recovery supports with new treatment hubs. Premier Doug Ford, he has spoken in the past about the need for more of an emphasis on treatment and rehabilitation for people with addictions. He made his position clear yet again earlier this month. Have a listen.
I'll be very frank, I'm not sold on these safe injection sites that are in neighborhoods that needles are all flown around. It's a haven for drug dealers, in my opinion. Let's get these people the support they need, build more detox beds, and I know our minister will be making an announcement shortly regarding that.
Now, the restrictions come in the wake of last summer's shooting death of an innocent bystander and mother of two who was struck by a stray bullet outside the Queen Street East safe injection site where I am this morning. Some of the people who live in this neighborhood, they told me that they believe safe consumption sites are a vital part of the city's response to drug use, but they also need to be balanced with community safety. Here's what they told me.
Well, I think it's important for a community to cater to anyone who lives in it, right? And they're just as much our neighbors as, the folks who live in houses here.
I'm supportive, but with lots of audit oversight.
I'm actually a nurse myself, and harm reduction is a part of what our job is, and people are going to use whether there's safe injection sites or not.
Yeah, I understand it's important, the facilities, but it's also important the people who live around those facilities are also safe.
Things are safer, then people just...
And okay, so that last point was very good, and that's what seems to be lacking in a lot of liberal and progressive mindsets and people that choose to think that way. Is just like Mike Tyson has said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And that seems to be very, very similar to these radical policies that are set in place. Is everyone agrees, or a lot of people agree with the idea of it, of appealing to everybody and peace for everybody and blah, 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 until you realize that that shit just doesn't work. That's awesome to think that way when you're going through a hippy dippy phase in college, universities, and peace within. You wear tie-dye and you sing Kumbaya and you go to the beach with your friends and you stay up till 1 a.m, you have a campfire and you sing, with the guitar or whatever it is. You learn how to play harmonica. You're like, look, I'm making it. I'm figuring myself out. And that's phenomenal. But what they say, and I think there's a saying, I forget the exact riddle, but when you're young and you're empathetic, you're more progressive and liberal. And when you're older and your brain develops, you're more conservative. And having safe injection sites near, like having drugs near schools, doesn't make any sense. That's the most ridiculous thing at all. Like you're bringing and inviting people to be in those neighborhoods around our children. And like Toronto is just littered with needles in parks. It's crazy. It just doesn't make any sense. It's so disrespectful to the taxpayers, to the law-abiding citizens, to the non-drug users in those communities when you do shit like that. I don't exactly have the answers to solving this drug crisis. I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. That's not my interest. But as somebody who sits on the other end of it, who pays taxes, who observes everything and sees when things are good, when things are bad, what the Liberals have done is just expedite things into being bad to worse to, oh my goodness, we might be fucked if they continue this. But I'd love to know what your guys' thoughts are down below. Next up, we have a very, very weird tweet. I can't believe that old tweets are still being used against people, but the new senator, right, Charles Adler, has a bit of a controversial background, I suppose. And you have CBC brought up this older tweet from him where he called senators whores, and he's confronted on it. So let's take a look at this.
Let me give this example. And I will say, this is back from 2013, but you explicitly say, cleaning out the Senate barn is not complicated, and you suggest that if you paid them less money and gave them no pension, quote, the whores won't take the job. Now, you're going to have to work alongside people that you, yes, it may have been in the context of your profession, but that you referred to as a group of whores, Charles Adler. So how do you expect that that's going to go?
Well, I'll just do the Canadian thing. I'll just ask them for forbearance, ask them for forgiveness, tell them I'll redeem myself, whatever it takes. If you're expecting me to say, I see my colleagues as whores, I mean, we can just put this down. No, I don't. And that's the quote. Charles Adler does not see his Senate colleagues as whores.
And there you go. That's how you beat the allegations of an old tweet. But he's got a whole lot of other problems coming. That guy was specifically appointed by Justin Trudeau, and it is extremely controversial. But I'd love to know what you guys think about his answer there. Just flat out say, no, that's not what I believe, and take it however you want. Very, very funny and kind of a cool way of answering things. It's refreshing, but also he's not really a good person for that job. So there's also that. So I'm laughing, but also, go fuck yourself, Charles. Moving on, you have a post on X from myself here talking about something a little bit more serious, talking about MAID. So over 50,000 people of Canada have used the MAID program, medical assistance in dying. And for context, you have Canada's population, 35, 40 million right now, compared to California's population, which is very, very similar. Now, California has also come out with a program like MAID right around the same time that Canada has. And just to kind of compare the numbers, California, I think, has had under 1,000 people use that MAID equivalent program compared to Canada's 50,000. that is very, very morbid, and also puts things into perspective of what the hell's going on in Canada and why are we pushing people so drastically to use this program. And it's also under immense amount of scrutiny based off of certain requirements that are currently would make you eligible to use that program. So people who are broke and can't pay their bills can unalive themselves using government resources. WTF? Genuine question. If you voted for Justin Trudeau, is this really what you voted for? And I think the answer to that is a lot of people would have to say no. That's not what they voted for. First of all, nobody who voted for Justin Trudeau voted for a Trudeau NDP coalition. Nobody who voted for Jagmeet Singh voted for a NDP Justin Trudeau coalition. And nobody voted for, if you voted for either of these people, for this country to now be so radicalized that you have over 50,000 people who have chosen medical assistance in dying, who can't pay their bills, who are sad, who are like surface level depressed. And that's what we're going to be taking a look at right now. So CTV wrote an article and they shared it on their X account. Canada's assistance dying law faces constitutional fight for excluding mental disorders. And that's just like, holy smokes, man, what is going on? So they're trying to add more things that would make you eligible for medical assistance in dying. And I believe that if you are depressed, like just depressed, I don't know if you're eligible to get to get made from that, but I did read somewhere, and I hate this fast flowing news cycle that we have, because you see something on X and unless you click on it right away and your refresher page is gone forever if you didn't track that source. But nonetheless, I did read somewhere that they're trying to make it so that if you don't have a terminal illness, then you can just do that. So that's the whole controversial thing about MAID is if you have a terminal illness, you know that you're going to die before 12 months, 24 months from now, you're in a tremendous amount of pain. Is it ethical to provide medical assistance dying? A lot of people would say yes. A lot of people would say no. And that is, it's terminal, right? Terminal, you're going to die regardless. Non-terminal would mean that you can be cured, whether it's an addiction to something, whether it's you're broke, you can't pay your bills, whether you have depression, you're sad, you have anxiety, all those things. So right now, I believe there's a wait list for non-terminal medical assistance in dying, where if you sign up now, you won't be eligible to use MAID until I think it's the year 2027, which is again insane that you can still use medical assistance in dying if you aren't terminal. I don't understand that at all, but that's kind of the state of Canada. And I want to pass the question off to you. How does it make you feel? How does it make you feel that Canada is becoming just a mass grave on the government's dime? It just seems bizarre that you would ever be able to do something like that for non-terminal. Nonetheless, let's shift gears a little bit and take a look at what I have never really seen before. So that's why I'm sharing it. I thought it was really, really cool. Ontario Provincial Police said this week they're conducting aerial traffic enforcement and monitoring roadways with their Cessna plane equipped with forward-looking infrared cameras. Now, I've seen signs all the time when I used to live in Ontario for you have the aerial traffic enforcement. This area is patrolled by aircrafts. And I've always wondered, what does that even mean? Like, I've never seen a plane or helicopter flying above the sky to check my speed. But now we have answers, and it's kind of cool.
Today, we're going to be conducting some aircraft enforcement utilizing our Cessna aircraft. The Cessna is equipped with a camera system, a FLIR camera system, and shot over software. What those two systems do is allow us to monitor traffic on the highways, looking for violations like speeders, commercial vehicles following too close, aggressive drivers, those types of activities, and we will be directing ground intercept units to make traffic stops on those vehicles.
That's crazy.
In Ontario, driving on the shoulder to bypass traffic puts you and others at risk. The paved shoulder is for emergency vehicles and breakdowns and is not to be used as a driving lane. This driving behavior can lead to serious collisions and
I mean, that's just standard stuff. I'm not sure why they feel the need to put that in their video. You shouldn't be using the shoulders to pass. But nonetheless, that's kind of crazy. And the scariest part is that with the advancement of technology and with AI and in conjunction with drones, chances are that they won't even be using planes in the future, in the near future. They're going to be using drones, automated drones that go back to their charging station after, you know, they've used 50% or 60% of their battery consumption, and it's all going to be automated. So chances are in the not so distant future, like 5 years from now, maybe less, maybe more, we could see drones flying above us on the highway that, just like a red light camera would give you a speeding ticket, a drone would do the same. And that's a freaky world to live in. Like all those sci-fi movies where that shit happens, that is not too far away. And I want to bounce a question off to you. How does that make you feel? Isn't that a little freaky? To me, it's a little freaky. And speaking of freaky, we have this video, this interview of Justin Trudeau, where he has said one of the most controversial things that he said in his career. We want more immigration. Canadians specifically want more immigration, which, I mean, I can ask you guys right now what your thoughts are on that, but I don't know what the point is, because I feel like most people would say, no, we don't want more immigration.
Your government, Mr. Prime Minister, has set the world's most ambitious targets for immigration. While the rest of the West is mostly closing its borders, Canada will welcome some 1.5 million people from 2023 through 2025. This should be something to celebrate, but instead, a deep resentment is taking hold in Canada. Why?
Okay, that makes for a good headline, but it's not accurate. Canadians remain a place that is more positively inclined towards immigration than just about anywhere else in the world. And that's because we have been incredibly successful at welcoming and integrating people who have then turned around and built families and communities and a growing economy for the country. And while other parts of the world have turned against immigration, we've seen it as a real benefit. Now, it doesn't mean it's all rosy. We are facing real challenges around housing, but it's not just an issue around immigration, because people are facing housing challenges everywhere in the world. Singapore is facing certain challenges around housing, as all you know, and it's not purely linked to immigration. Economic growth, space, zoning, all sorts of different things are contributed. Underinvestments by successive governments over the past few decades in Canada has certainly contributed to that as well. But the good thing around housing is it's a solvable problem. We have solved it before when people returned from the end of World War II, when baby boomers reached the age where they're all trying to buy homes and get their own place. We saw massive construction of housing in Canada, and indeed across many of our democracies. And that is what we're focused on doing again. We will solve this problem by working with all different orders of government, with partners in the private sector, with partners in the nonprofit sector, to make sure that we are addressing and solving this housing challenge. We've done many things that have been successful so far. There's lots more to do, and we will keep doing them.
He's just such a weird fella. Like, in complete denial that the housing crisis is at all contributed to immigration. We need more immigration. We need more immigration. Oh my God, what's happening to the housing market? I never would have expected this. This is crazy, and it's an anomaly, and it's only happening in Canada. I don't know. Kind of weird. Justin Trudeau it seems to be a little bit delusional when it comes to a lot of things. But like I said, it would be a waste of time at the start of that video. I will now indulge in that waste of time and ask you, the viewers, how do you feel about this? Do you agree that we should be upping immigration, that immigration is benefiting our country at the current rate? Or do you think that we should kind of revisit that? Let's know what you guys think. And it's not really helping our case when you have numbers like this come out, where Justin Trudeau now gets to brag about the fact that inflation has gone down again to 2.5%. We still have a lot more work to do to make sure Canadians feel that relief in their bank accounts, but inflation is cooling. And that is good news. And I don't know, it just feels like it's made up. But let's take a look at what a more financially literate person has to say. My go-to person for that on X is Ron Butler, the angry mortgage guy. Bank of Canada rates are locked in. Inflation rates falls Canadian dollar is fine. Expect another Bank of Canada rate cut in September, on September 4th, and likely at all the remaining meetings this year. As per expectations, Canadian CPI came out at 2.5%. Perhaps more important is the Canadian dollar. At the beginning of the Bank of Canada cutting cycle on June 5th, the dollar stood at 73.4. Today, it's 73.0. I know there will be 20 comments that say I'm just a dumb mortgage broker and know nothing about currency, and that the dollar will fall if Canada continues to cut and the U.S. Fed doesn't. Fine. Say the Canadian dollar will now tumble if the Bank of Canada cuts in September, and they will. Say it, except the U.S. Fed will start cutting, and then it's just a series of matching cuts. Let's ask better questions. How far down will the Bank of Canada go, and how fast? And this is something that Canada is going to be just like, people are very worried. People are holding as much cash positions as they possibly can for potentially an investment of a lifetime, because we don't know what the hell is going to happen. If the Bank of Canada keeps dropping rates at they are right now, sure, on paper they get to brag, the government gets to brag about rates being low again and the economy is stabling itself out, but that's just not true. House prices are still really crazy, and we also have highest record of unemployment here in Canada. Plus, we also have highest record of people pooping on beaches. So there's a lot of very serious things going on in Canada that the government is just saying isn't a problem, such as pooping on beaches, except for the Ontario government. They've admitted that that is a problem, and people should stop doing that, which is a crazy thing to say to grown-ups. Hey, you grown-up over there, don't use a toilet, poop on the beach, said nobody ever. Nonetheless, people are very, very nervous about what's going to happen. But let's continue this. It's a Bank of Canada rate of 3% or 2.75% or 2.5%. This terminal rate will be a function of just how bad the Canadian economy gets. Will it be outright recession or something that just feels exactly like a recession? But since 3.5 million people arrived in 3 years, technically it's not. And that just also validates the points of what the hell is going on. Sure, the numbers are coming down. Sure, that looks good. Sure, in theory, we would live there comfortably for a very long time. But the reality, and I hate to use that freaking line because all these idiot, progressive, radical, liberal politicians use this. The reality is, but the reality, frankly, the reality would seem, that's a good workaround. The reality is that our immigration, in conjunction with how it's going, how foreigners are scooping up all of our jobs vis-a-vis seeking asylum, immigrating here, work visas, you name it, it's happening. It's out of control. The house is not being built. Just things aren't making sense. So they can bring down those numbers all they want, but that isn't going to solve the fact that you have millions of people coming in per year, over 1 million. If I'm not mistaken, over 1 million people are coming in per year, and you don't have the housing boom to reflect that. Houses just aren't being built. It doesn't make any sense at all. And I just want to pass the question off to you. Are you preparing for this, like, potentially massive recession that's about to happen? What is your position on this? Are you holding cash? Do you even have investments? Are you hoarding food or toilet paper? Like, I'd love to know what everybody is doing. But the Toronto Star has shared this, and then you also have mainstream media talking about this. So let's take a look at what they have to say.
In other news making headlines, Canada's annual inflation rate dropped to its lowest point in more than 3 years, boosting expectation of another interest rate cut from the Bank of Canada next month. StatsCan reporting the rate dropped to 2.5% in July, down from 2.7% in June. Lower prices for travel tours, passenger vehicles and electricity helped drive the figure down. The central bank is scheduled to make its next interest rate announcement on September 4th. Let's now bring in Pedro Antunes, Conference Board of Canada Chief Economist. Pedro, good afternoon, and thank you for your time here on CTV News Channel.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So let's discuss this new inflation rate we are seeing. It's the lowest we've seen since March 2021. On expected lines, you think?
Excuse me. No, I think we were kind of looking for a lower number this month, and in fact, we know that inflation has come down in part because of these kind of base effects, like what happened to prices last year, and they were quite high at that time, and so we're seeing this play out in terms of lower inflation numbers. I think it's good news. We've seen now it's taken about a year, in fact, to get inflation down to just above that 3% range, now to something a little closer to making our central bankers feel more comfortable that we're going to hit that 2% target. So very good news in the latest numbers.
It's also interesting to note, Pedro, while we're seeing inflation numbers come down, there are some, of course, commodities that continue to rise. For example, the cost of groceries rose at 2.1%. Rents costs also rose by 8.5%. So how are you looking at the numbers while inflation drops, cost of living is still high?
Well, let's not. We need to be careful about understanding what inflation is. Inflation is the change in prices going forward, and we're seeing that settle. I think often consumers and our households across Canada are expecting to see prices come back to where they were pre-pandemic, or perhaps having taken off, and that's not going to happen. So if the price of your steak has doubled, it's now going to stay at those high levels, but it's essentially not going to grow as quickly going forward.
And that right there is the scariest thing that any government official or someone who is a policy maker can say. Anyone who's expecting their steak price to come down to pre-pandemic levels, it's just not going to happen. So if your steak or insert other grocery item price has doubled, it's going to stay there. It just won't increase in value at a rate in which it has in the past. Ladies and gentlemen, this is insane. And this is the biggest piece of news that I think I've ever really come across. Is this right now, the cost of living right now is the new normal. That sets the precedent for, I know house prices and condo prices in major cities are fluctuating and people are panicking and selling them at a loss, but grocery prices, the cost of gas, you're never going to see it drop back down to $1.20, 99 cents. It is here. What we have right now in Canada, our current standard of living, this is it. It's going to stay here. So if your job if you haven't received a pay increase to match this insane amount of inflation that we've just received over the past 5 years, then chances are that your money is being devalued every single year based off of what was just said. This is horrifying. And this is something that is unfortunately not being broadcasted by the mainstream media enough. People are still sitting around going, when are prices going to crash? When is this going to happen? Eggs are too expensive. Blueberries are too expensive. Steak is too expensive. And we just heard it right here. Those prices are here to stay. And if your income hasn't increased to match that insane inflation, then you either are going to be devalued, your currency is just devalued, or you need to find additional income sources, whether that's passive or whether that's a different job or whatever it is. And that's not any sort of financial advice. That's just me going based off of what the hell they just said. We are living in this new time where Canada is so expensive. And we need to forget about pre-pandemic prices, because that apparently is never going to come back, and we can only move forward. And the only way that we're ever going to live in an affordable time again is with a change of government. But unfortunately, the government can't slash grocery prices to where they were pre-pandemic levels. They just can't. The NDP is saying that they can, but that doesn't make any sense. And that would make us a literal communist country if they were able to do that. So if you want communism, I suppose vote for NDP. But if you want more affordability, anything that's more affordable than what we currently have right now, then it seems like the only real way to go about that is by having a change of management, So that would be going from a Liberal government to a Conservative government. At least that's the optimistic belief of a lot of Canadians, including myself. But that's where we're going to end this video. And as we do end it, I would love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. And on your way out, I would like to encourage you guys one last time to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you in the next one. Bye for now.